Dominic Rufran. Welcome to the Better Health Show.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
I'm excited too. And not only do we work together, but you're also really big into health. And one thing that came up was you were like, why have I never been on your show yet? And I'm like, well, what do you have to tell women listeners? And you're like, I have lots to say. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say and how it's going to apply to women. And so my podcast is all on health. That can be anything from mental health to spiritual health to fitness health, nutrition. And so to begin, could you tell us a little bit about your background, where you live now, where you're from? I mean, you were an NFL player. So for those listening, Dom not only works now with me, but he was an NFL player for the Falcons. So I would hope there's some athletic background there.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So my background has essentially been devoted my life to football. Since I was 2 years old, I literally wanted to play in the NFL, and I literally chased that dream until probably about 5 years or so ago. So I still remember watching TV with my dad saying like, that's going to be me one day on TV, doing push-ups at 2, playing catch. Like, yeah, I was literally like a little monster kid. And like preschool, I'd bring my football to school and we had to take like naps, and I would essentially be the kid that like just wanted to go outside and play. And the teachers like had to bribe me, like, if you take a nap, then you can go outside and you can play football. And I'm like, okay. So like I'd close my eyes and like pretend like I'm sleeping like with it, holding my football. And I'm like looking at all these other kids like, I can't believe you guys actually take naps. Like I'm thinking like, you would take naps at this age? You guys are strange, you know? A little side note, which is kind of be funny. I don't know if it's too far for the listeners, but like I was also that same kid that like, I don't know if you've like, taken care of kids or anything like that, but kids that are like 3 years old, 4 years old, yeah. Right? When they use the bathroom, they're standing at the urinal, they like pull their pants all the way down to their ankles. And so like, I was that kid that like judged when I was like 3 and 4 years old, like, why are you guys pulling your pants all the way down to your ankle?
You were always judging the kids.
Always judging the
kids. I'm
yeah, exactly. And I was like always the older, felt like the more mature kid, and like always, even at that age. And I kind of carried on through like my life, and a lot of it had to do with a lot of hardships and the way that I was raised, and the discipline that my mom and dad put me through, and things like that too. But so ultimately, grew up in Colorado Springs. Pursued football wholehearters, got a Division I scholarship to University of Wyoming, played there, had a great time, had a few records there, got an opportunity to play, for a small time in the NFL. And through that whole process, I devoted my life to making my body essentially being my temple to where it was a machine. And I tried to learn anything and everything that I can when it came to like athletic performance. And so even when it came to before I was actually like done with sports, like I was playing, I always said, okay, when I'm done playing sports, I'm going to be a personal trainer. I'm going to be a PT, or I'm going to be a strength and conditioning coach, or even like have like a nutrition thing, like part of that. Like that was my dream. Like that was my dream for the longest time. And I became obsessed, literally obsessed, to where like every hour of every second that I had free, I was YouTubing, going down rabbit holes, learning a ton. So I have a lot of background knowledge from that space of like, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. But then I also said, the more I know about this, the more I can apply it to my body, the more I can then apply to my dream of playing in the NFL. So it can just like feel like a win-win at that point in time.
Totally. Wow. So it really started at a young age, and it was honestly a love for a sport. And then from there on out, it was just like, how can I be the best at the sport? And that required, optimal health and fitness and all of that. So could you tell us a little bit about your health background as a child compared to when you started optimizing your body?
This is so funny because I was always a really skinny kid growing up. Like very, very skinny. And I also grew up in a very poor environment as well too. So we didn't have like a ton of money for like high quality food, things like that. Like we actually got a lot of our food from like welfare, food stamps, like those types of things. And so like the basic of things of like pasta being a key staple of like night, because it's like you can buy a whole box of spaghetti for literally 88 cents and feed a family of like 10. So we had a lot of pasta, some of that. I was also the kid that hated vegetables, and even still to this day, like I am not a fan of vegetables. Like, that's, as you know, you cook, and when vegetables are there, I'm like, I guess I'll eat it. Like, I'm really indifferent about a lot of them. Some of them are okay, but like there's not a single vegetable on this planet where I'm like, I love this thing. I'm upset. Like, nope, doesn't matter how it's cooked. I'm like, yeah, this is good or this is that. But I'm never like, oh, I love vegetables. And so like I used to be the kid that sit at the table and my parents like, if you don't eat that, like you can't get up. I like take the salad and like throw it under the table. Like, you know, like, that's how much I
was
hate
like
it.
the one where there's fat on a steak and I would like throw it under the table.
Oh my gosh.
Veggies, I was like, well, they weren't the worst.
Of
So
course, I can
exact
just see
opposite
that.
here.
Yeah, completely different. Maybe that has something to do with our genetics and
I was actually thinking that.
our body styles
body
today's
styles.
too.
Yeah, that's probably
kind
accurate.
of something like that. So I actually tried to do whatever I could to gain weight when I realized that it was important to gain weight. So when I was in high school, like I was super skinny until my sophomore year in high school. Sophomore year in high school, what I ended up doing was my dad was nice enough to make me an egg sandwich every morning.
Wow.
And then from there, I would eat lunch. And then after I'd eat lunch, I'd go lift. And I would lift as heavy as I could, try to get as big as I could. And I would drink this massive weight gainer shake. Just huge.
Wait, what does massive mean?
So like 1,000 calories of just like protein with like milk that I would like bring and just like put it in there and just chug it right after the workout. Wow. And lifted a ton and ate a ton, went home, typically ate pasta or like a smothered burrito or something like that, and would drink like a protein shake before bed again. And I gained in probably like 3 months, I gained like 20 pounds. Like I went from like 140 to 25 actually to like 165. And I got really strong too. And that's the thing that especially kids don't understand is that when they're going through that phase and their like hormones are going crazy and they haven't lifted yet, if you start putting a ton of food in their body and start lifting a lot, your body's going to adapt really fast. There's going to be a point in time though, as like you get to adult where you've already hit that peak where like your gains are only so big, like they're very incremental at that point. But when you're younger, you have the most opportunity to get the most gains. It's like the newbie gains, and it's like anything. It's just the newbie gains because you've never done something before.
Right. Why is it that it starts to slow down? So like, you know, the adolescent years, teenage years, it's really big gains, but then later on it slows down. Is it all hormonal? Like what are the big factors there?
Yeah, I think a couple things is your body essentially like adapts, right? Especially when you start to do something like a lot of it for like a long period of time. And so it's like you can become like a really good runner, right? Really fast. All you gotta do is just start running. You're like, I go from like being able to walk to being able to just run 3 miles within a couple weeks because I just do it. But it's like now if I have to get faster at that mile, well, now it's going to take a lot more time because I may not be gifted or I have not have the genetics or whatever that looks like. I've already hit my ceiling to where now I can only now incrementally get better. So it's the same thing as a kid. It's like as a kid, you start lifting for your first time. You're a really scrawny kid. You have all these hormones, like great. But then you start taking advantage of the hormones. You hit a certain peak where it's like, okay, you're now have got all these massive gains. Now, the only way to improve is to get these incremental gains because your body's adapted to everything you've done before. So you shocked your body. You've hit that shock system. Right. And now once you've shocked the body, well, now you've essentially now can only get incremental gains at that point. And that's why a lot of times when people like change up their workouts or they change something drastically, like they see big gains again. But a lot of times, sometimes it's not sustainable. And so you have to find a way of how can I do it in the most healthy, effective way. And that's why I always encourage like, for kids, you know, do it young and do it all out and you're going to see massive gains. And then it's the people at that point who can be the most consistent are going to be the ones that are going to win at that point. And that's where people then forget is consistency is key.
Oh yeah. That's so accurate in everything, not just at the like performance. And thinking about women and how our hormones change over the course of a month, I would think that, well, I do know that there are certain times in the month where we can experience like major gains. Yep. But then there's other times in the month where it's like, I'm not experiencing any gain at all. And so thinking about how we change over the month, it's like our body's always in a process of like changing versus like a day-to-day like men are. So, you know, it's fascinating to see the comparisons between men and women. And I'm sure like women, as we get older, it's the same thing. But it's cool that we have a cycle where we go through that we're going to experience more gains, where men, they have the same thing every single day, basically. It's fascinating.
Well, and you start looking at athletic performance, and one of the big things that come into is recovery. And recovery plays a big factor in like how well you can essentially regenerate to, you know, become the better version of yourself. And stress, you obviously have to create stress in the body to then repair. But if you stay in a stressful state, you're never going to then be able to repair. And so when it comes to women, you know, in athletic performance, during that time of the month, you're actually in a lot of like your hormones are in a place where you're like a lot more stress on the body, so on and so forth.
Right.
And so it is true when it comes to women, when it comes to athletic performance, they actually will perform better, not in those time cycles than if they are the other, you know, 3 weeks out of the month, which is actually very fascinating to me. It's like, for like you said, for men, it's like, yeah, we have other factors of like our sleep, how we eat, you know, how our mental is, and that's all things women deal with too. But women have an extra layer that they have to deal with, which is essentially having to deal with their cycle and their period. And when that happens, like during those 3 or 4 days, you're creating that more stress on the body. Therefore, you're not going to be as optimal as if you were for those other, you know, 3 weeks out of the month.
I'm very impressed with your knowledge on this. Did you dive into that too at some point?
I did not.
You were gonna like work with people.
Yeah. I just have had a lot of experience, like being around other athletes, like either women or men or all levels. And I think through experience, you just have these conversations naturally with people, and other people have done the research for you. And you're like, wow, that's actually very fascinating.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I'm so glad. I'm like, you're bringing value right now to women listeners.
If you didn't think that I was bringing value, then why would you have me on the podcast, April?
I had to trust the process. So you're really big into athletic performance. What does that actually mean to you?
Yeah, it's very fascinating because there's like this graph or this pie chart where you can look at the difference between athletic performance and like being healthy in life. And they're on the opposite spectrum of each other. Like you can't really do both at the highest level, and they won't correlate with each other. You can do some of both. You can eat for performance, work out for performance, and also eat for health and perform for health. But if you want to do the extremes of one side or the other, you want to be the best in the world, you can't be the healthiest person. If you want to be the healthiest person, you can't be the most athletic, high performance person. They're just different. And there was a story of this bodybuilder where he essentially was trying to pursue Mr. Olympia, and he wanted to be the best he could be and get that title, his essentially his card to where he could be pro. And that was his dream ever since he was a kid. He chased that till he was 30. What ended up happening at 30, he had a kid, and the kid changed his life. It changed his life forever. And I know a lot of people are like that, men, women, you know, once they have a kid, their life essentially changes.
Passions,
They're like he wanted to be the best he could. And so he took the test for telomeres, and the telomeres before he had the kid, when he was like chasing bodybuilding, he was 30, was 55. So even though he was 30 years old, his internal age was essentially saying that he was actually 55 years old. So externally 30, but he inside it was 55. And a lot of that has to do because when we're looking at performance, you're eating more food than you should, right? You're exercising way harder than you should. Lifting weights is not that great for you, putting that type of load on your body all the time. The stress from the organ from eating the type of food, the stress from the performing all the time, like on your body mentally. And then on top of that, like he was probably taking like steroids and other things like that, that are hormones that weren't effect. And consequently too, like if you look at women, when they're taking birth control, like what is that?
Oh gosh.
It's literally a steroid, right? It's just a steroid.
So
you have these hormones in your body. So like consequently, like there's some overlapping correlation to where I'm sure it would be fascinating actually to see the studies, like women that take birth control versus women that didn't, if they test their telomeres, like if they'd be older, would they not? I bet you they would be, which is just very fascinating to take a peek at.
I could guarantee they probably would be.
Yeah. So ultimately what ended up happening, to finish the story, is he decided to let go of bodybuilding. And he decided to do all the things right from like a health perspective. Stopped lifting as heavy, still worked out, ate better, didn't consume as much food, stopped taking steroids. He went from 55 to 38 within 18 months.
Wow.
So your body can adapt and switch it really fast too. Like our bodies are amazing at adapting. Yeah, which is really promising. And so like now he's saved 17 years of his life by not pursuing that. So ultimately it comes back to the same thing. If you're going to be an Olympian, you're going to be the best in the world, there's certain things that you cannot do or certain things that you have to do to get to that phase to be the best in the world. It's an obsession. You have to. Like there's no way around it. But then on the other side, like if you want to be the healthiest, live longevity, there's certain things you have to do that you can't do that don't correlate with each other. So you have to find your goals in your life. Like, hey, it's like what we always talk about. Like, hey, where do you want to go? And then let's create the roadmap to get there.
Exactly.
And then, you know, so like for me right now, I've pursued my whole life of pursuing the NFL. And like, I didn't really realize the difference at the time. But like now that I'm more knowledgeable, like I now pursuing CrossFit at a very high level. And I realize that like what I'm doing to my body today, the food I eat, how I perform, how I exercise is not made for longevity at all. Like it's just not.
I
Like,
don't think it
they,
is
they,
either.
they don't. But 3 years ago, I was doing everything for longevity. Like I was fasting, I was on keto, I was like eating less, I was working out a specific type of way. Like I was like, I'm gonna do whatever I can to optimize my brain. And so I was doing this. I was like, I'm gonna build a business, and like that's all I cared about. But then I missed something internally, and I was like, well, I really want to still have this competitive drive physically. So then I started pursuing CrossFit, and now CrossFit kind of like turned the switch where I'm still now pursuing that at a high level, even though I know it's bad for my body. I do know that it won't last forever. And if I just do this for 5 years, then I can essentially switch my telomeres kind of like the bodybuilder did.
That's cool. Have you ever done the telomere test?
No, I haven't. I don't even know how you would. I'm sure that you just go to some type of doctor or something and figure it out. But
I know there's like different biohacking tests where it's actually more accessible than you think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm actually blanking on all the different options, but it's more accessible than one would think. It's not like costly. It's pretty easy to go through. So
amazing.
I'll have to look into that for you.
Love that.
So when it comes to athletic performance, what would you categorize all the different areas someone should focus on? And then maybe like swing over to the other side then as well. When it comes to focusing more on just longevity and health, how would you categorize that? So like, what should someone pay attention to?
Yeah, so the factors that are going to be involved is mainly because I think sleep is going to be important for both sides of things. Like I think you should optimize your sleep regardless if you're athletic performance or not. But they say that for athletic performance for sleep, and this is a simple one, that you should almost get like 9 to 10 hours of sleep. So you see like Olympians, they're literally sleeping 10, 11, 12 hours a day, taking naps. And I think if as a human, like you don't need that much. Like I think you probably only need like 8 hours and you're good. So that's the slight difference there is like you could sleep more if you're optimizing it for athletic performance versus not. And also since you're working out more, you probably could use the sleep because you need to recover better.
Totally.
So sleep isn't the easy one. So then when we're looking at it from a nutrition standpoint and a workout standpoint, I think that's where like the two biggest differences come into piece. So the one I like to talk about the most is the nutrition piece about it. And to me, it's fascinating because I was somebody like 3 years ago that like I wouldn't eat breakfast. Then I would eat, the 8 hour window when I'd fast, and I'd eat lower carbs, higher fat. And I'm not saying that this is better for anybody by any means.
Depends on the body.
Everybody's going to be different. But for me, I felt like it was the best doing research, looking at biohackers, so on and so forth. And I would eat less calories. So I weighed 172 pounds on a normal day. So it was fine. I was like, I don't really care about my weight. I'd eat less food.
And how tall are you?
6 foot. So 6 foot 172, which is very fascinating. I think it's like six pounds for every inch of a person. So like you could always correlate. So if I was like, if I was 5'8", 24 pounds less than what I am now is what I'd weigh if I was 5'8".
Wow.
And I think it might be actually a little bit less if you're a woman. I think it might be 5 pounds for every inch. So 6 pounds for men, 5 pounds for women. So like you could always correlate to like, like that's what you weigh.
I'll have to calculate
Yeah. If you like, hey, you're 6 foot, this is how much you'd weigh. You're like, oh wow, I'd weigh as much as Dom if I was that high.
Moving to the next subject.
Just kidding. So that was a big factor. Was essentially how I ate. More fruits, vegetables, more clean foods, whole foods. Like it's the basic, simple stuff, right?
Totally.
This is the stuff that we all know we should be eating. That is how you should eat. And as long as you're eating a whole base diet, regardless of where it is, if you can't read what it is on the back of the label and you're like, I have no idea what this is, you probably shouldn't be eating it if you don't know.
Exactly.
And some of the biggest killers for health is like the oils that people don't realize. Like they're so bad, right?
It's like chemicals.
Like the canola oil, like palm oil, like peanut oil, like all these different oils, right? And I went to a big deep dive into how bad these were. So the two big like deterrents for why people were not healthy were oils and sugar is what I came to the conclusion
inflammation
with.
Right there.
Super big inflammation. And so that was the big difference there because now as an athlete, I've talked to lots of sports performance nutritionists. I've talked to lots of high level, best in the world athletes, CrossFitters, talked to, listen to diets with these high level people, and they all say the same thing. And when I was going through college, it's actually funny because let me take a step. When I was in middle school and high school, what I would do before every game is I would go to Taco Bell and I'd get a couple burritos,
Classic.
play a game, and I'd be good to go.
Yeah.
College, I was like, there's a guy named Chad Ochocinco,
Yeah,
where
I know who you're talking
and
about.
he would be like on this McDonald's diet and talk about how like McDonald, like he was so good too at football,
Yeah,
like probably legendary, one of the best receivers of all time.
McDonald's
And
is
he,
like best endorsement
yeah,
ever.
yeah, literally, and like he would eat that and he'd be just fine. He's like, I'm good. I'm just like,
Right.
so it's like at the
Wow.
end of the day, like, yeah, you could eat bad and it's
Yeah.
perfectly fine, right? For athletes, okay. So I'm gonna dive in a little deeper than that, but that's how I followed. I was like, well, if he did it, I could do it. So I ate like that, assuming that it was gonna be best for me.
Uh-huh.
I was like, I just need calories. That's all I need. Calories,
Yeah.
because calories is energy, so on and so forth.
Yep.
So that essentially, carried over. And as I started learning from like other sports nutritionists, people that optimize for sports performance, they always talked about things like crackers and peanut butter and jelly and milk with, chocolate milk in it.
Oh,
and it's
yeah,
like,
chocolate milk.
okay, so the two things that I'm coming across constantly is carbs and sugar,
Yeah.
and essentially like a lot of the protein as well. So at the end of the day, it wasn't necessarily the quality of the foods. It was more so along the lines of how much of the food. Calories was always most important, is can you get enough calories in to mitigate how much you're losing because you're
Right.
burning so much.
And you
right?
can't build muscle if you're not getting enough calories in. You have
Yeah.
to almost have more calories, and then the sleep on top of that is just
Yeah.
like,
Well, and it's not even the muscle standpoint, it's more so the energy. The energy is the most important piece, right? Because as an athlete, you can be a tennis player, you don't really need too much muscle,
Yeah.
or you could be a swimmer, like obviously these things are going to help. But when I'm on the field or if I'm in the pool or whatever I'm doing, how long can I last before I just essentially crash or I feel like I have no energy? And it was always around like, am I eating enough food? Am I eating enough calories? And the problem is as an athlete, you can never get in enough.
right.
You are always going to be at a deficit if you're either in practice, all those people that are performing all the time, you're typically going to be at deficits.
Yeah.
And the problem with eating that many calories is it's really hard to eat that much clean. So
Yeah.
if I'm eating salads every day and brown rice and chicken with, the one with no skin on it and all that stuff, like boiled chicken is the grossest thing in the world to me. So dry. Even
Yeah.
people that cook it right still. That's just me personally.
Yeah.
Like you can only do so much of that before you're like, I'm full. I can't eat anymore,
Right.
and I'm not even close to my calories. So you have to find ways to supplement it in. Like for me, I need to eat close to 5,000 calories a day if I'm going to hit my goals for performance.
Wow.
And so the only way I can do that is by eating things I like and eating things that are more calorie dense and eating things that are higher in calories, which means sometimes eating things with more sugar.
Right.
And the other thing is too, is like when you're a normal human being, you don't need a ton of sugar because you're not burning the glucose like you are when you're an athlete, and you need the glucose to recover. So like sometimes like when I'm done working out, I literally will drink 1,000 calories of Gatorade. So it comes out to be like 250 grams of sugar and 1,000 calories of Gatorade because I need that extra calories or I'll lose weight or I'll have no energy the next day and I won't recover well. But when I do that, I feel amazing the next day. But from a health perspective, not great for my organs. No way
Totally
is me
not.
drinking 250 calories of or grams of sugar and 1,000 calories of Gatorade good for any person at any point in time. It's not. But like I do it because I know it's going to make me better from a performance standpoint.
Because you're looking at the fact that you want to be the best when it comes to fitness and whatever performance you're doing versus the health aspect. And it's crazy to me because I had no idea how you were really into like the whole foods clean diet a couple of years ago, and here we are, and it's like when it's funny because the whole team makes funny because they're like, oh, you got your Skittles and your chips and
It's so funny.
and it's like, but does anyone know the fact that you dove into the healthy aspect as well? You know that bad oils are horrible, and you know that sugar is bad, and you're choosing it.
Yeah.
It's just wild. And it's funny because no one knows that.
Yeah.
They just make fun of you, but it's like, you've done your research.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like nobody really knows unless they sit down and have that conversation. Like they just see it and they just like then think it's funny. They're like, how do you eat all that and still like do what you do or look the way you do? And like, why do you love it? So I'm like, well, I do it for a reason. I also do love sugar. Like, I think the other thing too is like whatever lifestyle you choose, like if you're an athlete and you're eating carbs and sugar, you're going to crave that more than it doesn't matter if you're an athlete or not. Like if you're eating carbs and sugar, you're going to crave that, right? You get addicted to it.
Totally.
So then when you stay away from it as a normal person, you're like, oh, like I haven't had a soda in 20 years. Like I don't even want a soda. That sounds gross. So that's like how it is. And so the more you eat it, the more addicted you get to it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So 5,000 calories, how did you calculate that? is it the typical, I've, you know, looked at different strength trainers and what they do to calculate their calories. Is it like what you could find online, or did you specifically calculate that with your own unique way of doing it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it was a combination of both. So I started with the calculator. So you type into Google, like Google, what is my, like depending on also my goal. So if my goal is like, hey, I want to gain weight, well then it's different if I want to lose weight. Because if you're going to athletic performance, depending on the season time, you may want to gain or lose weight, or you may just want to maintain. So I typed in calorie calculator online, and like you can put in like your age, your height, your gender, your goals, how hard do you work out, how much do you work out, and like you can put all these factors, and they can tell you, okay, you need to lose this much weight, or you need to eat this much to lose this much weight. And so it was always around the whole equation of 3,500 calories equals a pound. So if my basic caloric intake is 2,000 calories, right? And that's what I just need to do to maintain weight. Well, I need to make sure that I stay at 2,000 calories. If I eat 2,500 calories and I do that every single day, that's 500 extra calories, right? Then above the 200, the 2,000, excuse me. So that's 2,500, 500 extra more. If I do that for 7 days out of the week, that's that 500 times 7, that's 3,500. That means if I eat 500 extra calories a day above that 2,000, I'll gain 1 pound a week, right? So it's always that calculation of like, how many extra calories do I need to gain weight, or how much calories less do I need? It's the same thing and vice versa. So if like, my basic of just living in life is 2,000 calories. Well, I need to lose or eat 1,500 calories or burn enough to get to that 1,500 mark to then lose a pound a week. And so for me, it was like, it started off at being 172. My goal that I really wanted to get to was 200. So that was essentially 28 pounds. And so in 6 months I did that. And so right now I'm at like 195, 196. And like, I'm really happy with the weight that I'm at, because I feel like that's the best for me to like not over consume food, and like for me to be happy with where I'm at. But that's where I started. And I started off like, okay, the calculator said that I needed to consume 4,500. Well, I do 4,500 for every single, and I weigh myself every morning. Like, I think it's important. Like, I know it's hard as an athlete sometimes, especially if you're a woman, like to be completely honest, because you have like these sometimes insecurities or like self-image issues of like wanting to not look at the scale every day. And it could like almost be deteriorating if like the scale's more than what you want it to be.
Your mindset's everything.
And your mindset is everything, right?
Totally destroy your whole performance.
Yep, exactly. And so if you can look at it as a way of like, okay, this is important for me for performing. And it's like, hey, this number on the scale has nothing to do with who I am as a person. It has everything to do with, okay, this is how I need to alter my eating or alter my, how much I'm working out, because it's going to affect my performance. I think that's important. But I know that's hard. Right. I know that's hard. I empathize with that. For me, I feel the same way when I like step on the scale and I lose a bunch of weight. Like it like affects me. I'm like, oh, like this doesn't feel good. So if I'm like 195 and the next morning I'm 192, it gives me a lot of data. It's like, man, you didn't eat enough, you worked out too much, or you didn't recover well. And I'm like, okay, so what do I need to do different? Although like the second I see a number, like I instantly get that pit in my stomach, like, you didn't do all the right things. That's what it really tells me. So I get it. It's like somebody steps on the scale, they gained weight. They're like, okay, maybe you just didn't do the right things. Or maybe there is, I think I could say too, like maybe you are doing the right things, but maybe now you need to go get blood tested, or you need to figure out there's an underlying health condition because, hormones. Or maybe it's your hormones, your period, or something is affecting that overall thing. So that's why I think it is important that you weigh yourself every morning when you wake up, because you can kind of keep data from your standpoint. And so that's what I did. I weighed myself every morning. I saw that I was making incremental gains. And when I realized I was plateauing and I wasn't making enough, I was like, okay, I got to uptake now my calories to get to where I want to. And then once my body got used to that, I actually could decrease the calories. My body was actually used to that standpoint of like my resting caloric number probably actually adjusted and went down after I was at 190, 198 for a while.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So fascinating. So I know that you focus a lot on recovery things that you can do. What do you exactly do? Lay it all out. Like, what are some great recovery techniques? Yeah. Strategies?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost, I think we talk about sleep. Sleep essentially would be illegal if everybody didn't do it. I mean, legit, because steroids are legal and it's literally for 8 hours you're creating HGH. And so I think it would be banned if everybody didn't do it, because that's how powerful it is. But we underutilize it, I think, as humans. It's because it's like we put it on a pedestal of like, oh, work hard, no sleep, like no sleep over here, I'll sleep when I'm dead, like all these different factors to grind, right? Which there is some belief to that, but like if you sleep 8 hours in a day, you still have 16 hours to do whatever you want. Like if you grind for 16 and sleep for 8, like you're sleeping a lot. Yeah, exactly.
Maximize your time.
Way too many times we're just all wasting our time doing things that aren't going to benefit us to where we want to go. Exactly. Right. And then the worst part is when we start complaining, right?
Yes.
So as long as you don't complain and you enjoy your life and you're doing what you're doing, like at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Right.
But so sleep being most important and optimizing your sleep, not
Mhm.
just getting the amount of sleep, like 8 hours, but going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, dark room, making sure it's cold.
Yep.
For some people, not eating too close to bed.
Yep.
For me, it's the opposite. If I don't eat on an empty stomach, then I'm like hungry, and then I wake up with lighter, and also like I don't sleep as well. So for me, like I need to have like more of a fuller stomach.
I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
Like I try to stop at a certain time. I feel like since I've been involved with Caleb's life now, I don't go to bed at the same time as like I would like to because of travel.
Yep.
I'm eating later, which is not what I would like either. So I'm trying to rework my schedule and make it as adaptable as possible and not stress over it either. Because that's a big thing is like if I stress over it, then obviously my body is going to show back negative results.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, eating, and that's why it comes back to like the genetics, and everybody has to know their body. And I think that's the cool part about athletes is that they've been an athlete for so long, they've been in tune with their body because since they were young, they were like paying attention. And then like as you get older and the more you like pursue it professionally, the more you have to pay attention to your body. How am I feeling? What's going on? It's like I know now like I have to eat before. But I'd say 95% of people probably in this world should not eat too close to bedtime. Like I think studies show that you probably shouldn't.
It's
because
specific type of people and like the blood sugar and everything. I actually know of two friends, and they're twins. And one of them, she thrives best when she, stops eating at a certain point and just fasts through the whole night. Her sister, who's a twin, has to take like a spoonful of peanut butter, almond butter with a little bit of honey to like stabilize that blood sugar in the middle of the night. Otherwise she wakes up and she's like super hungry.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I think I heard Dave Asprey, who's like the big biohacker, talk about that one time. It's like your levels of like your liver or something are super low, so you have to take like some sugar, but like the best sugar to do would be honey. Just like the raw honey to take it. But then he also said like if you take raw honey and it's heated up, then it's no longer good for you or something like that.
Enzymes are gone.
Yeah, it's like which is crazy to think.
Snap.
It's like the small things, right, that you don't ever think about.
Yeah.
So optimizing sleep, that's going to be first and most important. And I think the second thing is listening to your body. It's like, am I too tired today? Like, do I feel really exhausted? And is it to the point of like, where like I just am mentally exhausted where I'm like, you know what, I just don't feel like it? Or is it like my body's like really, like if I work out today, I might hurt myself. And sometimes taking a rest day is better for you for the rest of the week. And I think that sometimes we neglect resting, right?
There's days where I'm like, okay, I didn't sleep the best, or I'm tired, or I definitely am super sore from the day before. And I'm like, but if I don't work out, I'm being lazy and I'm not going to see the gains. But it's like, you just have to trust the process. Yeah.
Well, and that's what it comes back to again, is also athletic performance versus health. And I say that in the essence of like more mental toughness and mental health, because you hear people like the Navy SEALs and like those type of people like Jocko Willis and stuff talking about like when you don't feel like it, just like get up and do it. Or like Joe Rogan, like when you do like just get up and do it like every time, which creates that crazy mental toughness for you, right?
For sure.
So that's fine. Like as a normal human being, I think that's important because you want to keep that consistency of discipline. But for an athlete, I think they could be dangerous because if you do and you go back and like let's say you went off for 5 hours of sleep, that's when you can now get hurt. And if you get hurt, you're now out for the season, and now that could be your livelihood or your dreams or whatever it is. So I think there's got to be a fine line between like what it is you're going for again. And it's like if I'm that normal person that's like I want to be the best I can be in my business or my life or my family, like so on and forth, grind through it. Like get that mental toughness. Like do it. The athlete, it's if you got 4 or 5 hours of sleep and you didn't, like you definitely should reconsider if your like body's not feeling well. Maybe just like go get on a bike or something like that. Right. Other things is a sauna. Sauna's huge. I'm a big sauna believer. It creates lots of HGH, better, good toxins, good for the cardiovascular system. The thing that always comes up that it's very interesting is ice, like cold therapy.
Cold water therapy. Cryotherapy.
I'm not necessarily saying I'm a fan of that because I listen to other people who say that actually ice can actually inhibit, like it's not actually good for you from an athletic performance standpoint. So here's actually of all the data that I learned from ice, this is what it is. Okay. So if you work out and you're lifting and you're in off season, stay away from ice completely. Okay. Like ice is not good for you. Like it's just like an ibuprofen. It's not good for you. Like you're essentially cutting off the inflammation process of like what you need to heal
during off
during.
season.
Yep.
You're saying. Okay.
Because you're essentially cutting off that system
Right.
where the body needs to like heal on its own, because you're cutting off the inflammation where your body naturally goes to that process. Now, if you're competing and you have a game, let's just say you have it at 9 a.m., but then you need to have another game at 5 p.m., 9 a.m., and then 5 p.m. So you're going to play twice in one day, right? You want to stop that inflammation from occurring so you can still be at a peak performance for the next session. So depending on when you're performing, what's going on, time of season, may or may not use ice. So off season, stay away from it altogether. Let your body use those full gains, get the full recovery, so on and so forth. But if you're in the middle of a season and you're trying to recover for the next game, trying to recover for the next practice, you can perform at the high skill level. Well, then ice tubs and things like that are like really good, which I think is very fascinating too. Like people are doing research about that like all the times. And it's actually very fascinating. There's these things called palm cooling. And like, palm cooling, like PALM, it's like literally the palm of your hands, where they're showing tests now. Like if you put your hands in cold, then you actually perform better, like more reps longer. And it's not your whole body, right? But your palms, the bottom of your feet are the two places that can control your internal regulation, right? And so people put it like on the back of their neck or on their chest or their forehead, but it's actually doing the opposite for them. Their body like heats up faster and things like that to try to re-regulate it. But the parts that are the most effective is your palms and your hands. So people are now have created like machines where you can put your hands in like these things just to specifically warm up your palm
or cool down your
cool down your palms, which is very fascinating because like there's been studies to show people can do way more reps by doing that like before they exercise and things like that. So there's some cool studies that are out there now by actually some like scientists that have done it. And so I don't go as in depth of like the research that I used to at some point, but still to this day, like because I'm trying to perform at the highest level in CrossFit, I still try to learn as much as I possibly can. So then food, I think like the timing of food, the amount of food, like that's obviously important. They have other stuff like Normatec boots. Like, are you familiar with what that is?
No.
So Normatec boots is like you essentially slide your legs into these balloon type of style things, and then it like the air essentially expands onto it and then like pressurizes your legs, and essentially supposed to clear the lactic acid from it as well. And you're supposed to elevate your legs when you do it, and they have like full body suits that you can do too for like upper body, lower body.
I literally feel like it's like one of the blood pressure.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I hate those. I can literally feel my veins closing and opening, and I like get terrified.
That's exactly what it is. And you do it for long periods of time. We had that in college too. You know, obviously I think I said a massage is important, foam rolling, like there's lots of things out there. I think the hardest part is when you're trying to live a normal life and you're also trying to live for high performance, because you don't have the time to do a lot of it. That's why like professional athletes are professional athletes for a reason, because it's literally becomes an 8-10 hour a day job outside of sleeping that people don't realize like how much energy and time it takes. Chiropractor, like people may or may not believe in that. Like it just depends on what you believe. Like, so, and then you get hurt, you got to like do some of your PT and stuff, and like the mental aspect of it alone, like meditation, like talking to psychologists, like there's so much that you can do from an athletic performance to like help yourself recover to making sure that you're in the right place for the next day.
Totally. It's like taking over your health in a way where it's like you're focusing on it all the time is a full-time job. And there's so many times where I'm like, man, sometimes I wish I was a professional athlete, because I love this stuff. I want to focus on it all day long. And there's so many things and not enough time sometimes. Man, the struggle, I tell you. But
well, that's the funny thing in the CrossFit space, because you have like the small elite group of people that are just elite level and they do it full time. They don't make a ton of money. Some of them do from sponsorships, but then like exactly. But then there's like a group of people that are good, but they don't get paid for it. And they always say like, how nice would it be to be able to do this full time? Like you just eat, work out, sleep all day, every day. And like
sleep all the time.
I ask myself this all the time now to this day. Like if I got an opportunity to go back and play in the NFL, would I say yes or would I say no? I would say no to this day. And then I ask myself, if I could like be full-time games CrossFit athlete, get paid for it, like would I do it? And the answer is no. And it's because of like what we're doing here, like better wealth and all this stuff, right? At some point in time, your athletic career's got to stop. And so for me, it's like, well, I'm building what I already would do when I'm done playing, which is essentially how I got to this place originally. So as nice as that sounds to be
Yeah.
able to do that full time and not do anything else, like I think I would still be missing a piece of my life of like,
Totally.
and it's the same thing here. Like me doing just this was not fulfilling enough for me personally
Yeah.
to feel successful. Because here's the thing, success is for yourself, right? And I think that's why it's like, I feel like I want some of that success from a standpoint of like athletic performance,
Yeah.
but significance is for other people. And significance, I feel like I get that here at Better Wealth. So it's like
Yeah.
I get a combination of both.
Yeah. And what's a real blessing is the fact that like as we build better wealth, you know, you have the freedom to be able to structure your day.
Yeah.
Where if you were at a 9 to 5, like
Yep.
there's no way that you could do what you're doing when it comes to your strength,
It's
like
true.
training and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, it's really cool to be able to have the best of both worlds.
Yep.
And, you know, when I say that, where I'm like, you know, I wish I could just do this all day long. Like some days probably I'd be like, yes, I would. Overall, probably not though,
Yeah.
because of the fact that I'm like, unless I'm doing something in that space where I'm like giving back to people and serving, like there'd still be that unfulfillment because
Yeah.
of like God designed us to be, you know, to serve and give back. So
Yep. Well, that's the cool part about professional athletes though, is like they have a platform.
true.
And so when you have a
yeah.
platform, you can essentially do what you want because people listen.
That's
So when I
true.
was in college and I was playing, like I was able to go travel around and speak about my faith
Yeah.
and my testimony and share that with people and go back and do like sports camps for kids, and like people just
Right.
listen because of the platform you're on. So that's the cool thing, is like it doesn't really matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think God can put you in a position to be that
Yeah.
blessing, to give significance. But today in this moment in my life, CrossFit is not a significance thing. It's
Yeah.
more of a success thing that helps bring me fulfillment to help me
Mhm.
pursue significance in other areas like this. So
Totally.
I'm just a happier human being.
Yeah.
So I do agree. But then on the other thing is,
Mhm.
a lot of people, they want that lifestyle of like pursuing a professional
Mhm.
athlete, and then they realize how hard it actually is,
Mhm.
because it's hard, like waking
Yeah.
up every day and grinding and like putting, and if you don't
Mhm.
wake up and do it, like who else is going to? And if you
You're gonna
don't,
be replaced very
yeah,
easily.
exactly, 100%.
Yeah. Man, I totally forgot about the fact that it's like you have that platform, and there's so many awesome athletes where they're able to like, because they have that platform and influence, they can then give back and make a real impact because of what they've built. So good points. Before we wrap up to the main takeaways, talk to us a little bit about what your dream is in regards to like soccer fields, I think it was, and what you hope to do in the future in regards to that.
Yeah, thanks for asking, because
Yeah.
I love talking about it. So back in 2012, 2013, I went to Haiti, back-to-back years, and we went down there for essentially a mission trip. But the real main goal we went down there is to teach kids how to play American football. They love soccer, they love all that, but they don't know American football.
Right.
And one of the guys on our team, he was actually Haitian, and he ended up dying in a car crash. And so like we went down there every year to like honor his name, and he grew up in Haiti. So we went down there, taught the kids how to play American football, so on and so forth. But we went to this essentially this village/orphanage one day, and we spent literally 6 hours just like scraping rocks off this field so the kids could play on it. And when we were done, the kids just ran on the field and just started playing soccer, and they loved it. You could see the joy. They're happy. Like it was just amazing. And I was like, man, those 6 hours were worth it.
Totally.
And you wondered like kind of why they weren't playing beforehand. And you realize that, you know, they weren't blessed to have shoes. And so if they play on the field like that, like they'll end up cutting their feet, scraping and stuff like that. And so they just weren't.
Right.
And so when we were able to do that, it was a real feeling of significance for me to like, wow, like this would be really cool to be able to do this in third world countries all the time for people, for kids. And so I have just this big goal that I feel like God has instilled in me of like using my athletic background and also my faith of saying, hey, building sports fields for kids in third world countries is essentially that's something that's been in my heart now for the last few years. So today, like that's what I try to do, is I try to do everything that pushes towards that from a resource standpoint, energy standpoint, people standpoint. How can I essentially create a platform to be able to do that? And something like maybe even turf fields, it would be cool, because then it doesn't have to be like maintenance and things like that would be able to. So something like that I think would be really awesome. And along the way, hopefully I can love as many people as possible and have significance doing other things. And so I can get to that platform.
So cool. I just love that so much. And missions is like a huge part of my heart.
Love it.
And like working with kids and allowing them to be able to flourish in regards to their gifts and abilities, and being able to be mentored in that is so important. So there's some goals that I have there as well to just give back and serve. And so, few takeaways as we begin to wrap up before we enter rapid fire questions. Anything you want to give back to listeners takeaway wise?
No, I just think the biggest thing is for all things is you just have to know where you're going and where you want to go, and then create the roadmap to get there. And if it's athletic performance, fantastic. Like create a roadmap, find the people who have done it before and get mentored by them, research them. The internet's amazing for that. Or if it's like, hey, I want to live longevity, then find the people that have done that too and that are pursuing that. Because somebody out there is essentially doing what you want to do and they have the answers. You just got to go ahead and find. A lot of people just aren't willing to take that leap to put themselves out there. But that'd be the biggest things.
Cool. I love that. So now as we head into rapid fire questions, the first one I have for you is, what books are you reading right now?
So the first book is Atomic Habits. It's a book that we're reading right now as a company. So that's one. And there's another book. It's called Your Family Banking, essentially. And so like I'm trying to read as many books as possible around life insurance, since that's essentially what I do every day. So that's another book at the current moment.
Cool. Love that. What's your favorite food?
Favorite food is probably like French fries. I love French fries. French fries are good.
Soggy or crispy?
Crispy with no sauces, soggier with like ranch and other things. Yeah. So it's kind of both. Yeah, it's both. Yeah.
I'm a soggy person, but crispy deserves its time every now and then. Favorite travel destination or a dream destination you have?
I'm not a huge traveler in general, but I think somewhere in Africa would probably be that place, just because we sponsor a kid in Uganda. I think going there would be really cool to visit him.
Did you connect through Dan on that?
No, I've been doing this now for probably like almost 10 years.
I have a girl there that I sponsor.
Yeah, it's been like 10 years now since we've been sponsoring him. Wow. So we got to see him when he was like little, and now he's like, I think he's like 15 now or something. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's cool.
That just melts my heart. What is your definition of intentional living?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think intentional living is different for everybody. I think for me, intentional living is pursuing a life of significance. Yeah. And so like I was mentioning before, like success is for myself and significance is for other people. And so like I really want to live an intentional life of waking up every day, of living a life of significance, pursuing it for other people, loving people every day, and living a life for Jesus. And I think if I can do that every single day, then I am living intentionally. And so for me, like my living intentionally definition was different even a year ago. Yeah. I think as I'm getting more mature and realizing like how I really want to impact people and how I want to live my life for God, my intentional living is different. And essentially for everybody, I think as a whole of like what that looks like, it's like doing what you want, when you want, making the decisions effectively to pursue your life for your happiness at the end of the day.
Exactly. It's always thinking about how is this decision going to impact whatever goals I have or what the future holds that I would like to, accomplish, God willing. So really cool. Love that. So last thing is, how can listeners connect with you?
Oh, that's a great question. I haven't been I feel like asked that in a while.
You can schedule with the link and asset specialist meeting.
So, what we do here at Better Wealth is essentially the president of the And Asset Company. And so I focus around having conversations with people around life insurance. So it doesn't sound very fun or very sexy, which,
the only way to connect with them is if you want to talk about life insurance. Sorry, guys.
Nope. So it's just, I just bring it up because like, that is like the funny thing of what you're saying, right? It's like, this is what it is. So if somebody really wants to connect with me, the best way probably is through LinkedIn. Add me on LinkedIn and send me a direct message. Because that's the only platform that I really have that I check on. And so if you're like, hey, like I'd love to connect, I'd love to collab, I'm always open to just having that conversation on LinkedIn.
Cool. And that's under Dominic Rufran?
Yep. So Dominic, last name Rufran, Rufran.
Awesome. Perfect. Dom, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, thanks. I had a blast. It was real fun.
Too.
So.